All right, we are diving into a story from history that is, well, it's as fascinating as it is tragic. We're talking about the kingdom that vanished. I mean, think about that. How does an entire kingdom just disappear? And we're not talking about a slow decline, a gradual fizzling out. We're talking about a nation that for 200 years had power, politics, kings, and armies, and then was just wiped off the map. Its people scattered, never to come back together as their own nation. This is the story of the northern kingdom of Israel, which you might also know as Samaria. So let's put this whole thing on a timeline. It all kicks off around 930 BCE and comes to a very hard stop in 722 BCE. That's a little over 200 years. It's a complete story, right? It's got a clear beginning, a really chaotic middle, and a totally catastrophic end. And to really get why it vanished, we have to go all the way back to the very beginning. See, the kingdom's fatal flaw, it was baked in from day one. After King Solomon died, the big united kingdom of Israel just fractured. It split right in two. The northern tribes decided, we're out of here, and they broke away to crown their own king, a guy named Jeroboam. And this decision, it wasn't just politics. It was the decision that sealed their fate from the very start. Now, you really have to understand what was driving Jeroboam here. It all came down to one thing: fear. He was terrified of losing power. He thought, okay, if my people keep traveling south to Jerusalem to worship at the temple, eventually their hearts are going to go back to the king in Jerusalem. So his solution was, well, it was drastic. He decided to completely redefine their religion to keep them home.
And he did not mess around. Look at what he did. First, he sets up 2 golden calves, not as new gods, mind you, but as new, convenient symbols for the God they already knew. Then he creates brand new holy sites in his own territory at Bethel and Dan, so nobody would have a reason to go to Jerusalem. He appoints his own priests, guys who weren't from the priestly tribe of Levi. He even changed the dates of the sacred festivals. He literally built a state-controlled religion from scratch. And in doing so, he cut the spiritual lifeline to his own kingdom.
And this phrase right here, get used to hearing it, because this becomes the final verdict for almost every single king that comes after him. It's the recurring judgment, the fatal flaw that gets passed down from one generation of rulers to the next. The foundation was rotten, so everything built on top of it was doomed to fall. So, what happens when you build a kingdom on a foundation of political fear and religious rebellion? Well, the consequences came fast, and they were incredibly violent. The throne pretty much became a death trap. Jeroboam's own son, Nadab, he lasts just 2 years before he's assassinated. The next king, his son, Elah, he also rules for 2 years before he's murdered while he's getting drunk. And then you get this guy, Zimri. He assassinates the king, grabs the throne, and then loses it all so fast he just kills himself. This isn't just chaos. This is a kingdom literally eating itself from the inside out. Just let that sink in for a moment. 7 days. That was the entire reign of King Zimri. I mean, you can't come up with a better symbol for how deeply unstable this whole enterprise was. Power was a hot potato and life was unbelievably cheap. But here's the twist. The kingdom didn't just spiral into nothing. There were actually times when it looked incredibly strong, stable even, at least on the surface. This next phase is all about a powerful new dynasty that takes the kingdom to its greatest heights, while at the same time, its spiritual corruption hits rock bottom. And this is the great paradox of the Northern Kingdom. On the one hand, under kings like Omri and his son, the infamous King Ahab, it looked like a huge success. They built the amazing capital city of Samaria. They were respected on the international stage. But the reality? It was a spiritual disaster. Ahab and his wife Jezebel made the worship of a pagan god, Baal, the official state religion. They actively hunted down and killed the prophets of God. So from the outside, the kingdom looked stronger than ever, but on the inside, it was more rotten than ever before. After all that, a military guy named Jehu leads this incredibly bloody coup, and he is absolutely ruthless. He wipes out Ahab's entire family. He slaughters all the priests of Baal. It was a violent, dramatic, total house cleaning. It really looked like a reformation, a fresh start, but it was only skin deep. And there it is again, that same haunting phrase. Jehu got rid of Baal, for sure, but he kept the golden calves that Jeroboam had set up. He tore down the new, shiny corruption, but he held on tight to the original, foundational corruption. The fatal flaw was still there. So then,
Believe it or not, the kingdom has this one last spectacular golden age under a king named Jeroboam II. And just look at this chart. The economy booming. Territorial expansion, they were bigger than ever. By all the ways you'd measure success, Samaria was at its absolute peak. But look at that third bar. Social justice, it had hit an all-time low. All that prosperity, it came at a horrific price. It was wealth built on the backs of the poor and the weak. And God sent prophets, like a man named Amos, to deliver a blistering critique. This quote just cuts right to the bone. They were treating human beings as if they were worthless, just commodities to be bought and sold. And another prophet, Hoshea, he said the same thing. He described a nation where the fundamental relationship with God was completely broken. All that wealth, all that military power, it was just a mask hiding a society that was spiritually and morally dead. And the prophets were warning them, prosperity without justice is just a ticking time bomb. Well, after the long and wealthy reign of Jeroboam II finally ended, that ticking time bomb went off. The final collapse was so fast and so brutal, it's breathtaking. The kingdom just fell right back into its old violent habits. But this time, there was no pulling out of the nosedive. The assassinations started up again, kings were lasting for a few months, maybe a few weeks. The giant Assyrian empire started pulling all the strings, making the kings their puppets. The whole thing just came apart at the seams. The very last king, a man named Hoshea, he made a fatal mistake. He tried to rebel against Assyria, and the response was just overwhelming. The Assyrian army surrounded the capital city, Samaria, and they laid siege to it for 3 straight years. Finally, in 722 BCE, the walls fell, the kingdom was conquered, and the Assyrians deported the people, scattering them all across their empire. And just like that, the northern kingdom of Israel was gone. So why? Why was the end so final? I mean, the southern kingdom, Judah, they'd eventually go into exile too, but they came back. Samaria was gone for good. And the answer, it goes all the way back to its broken foundation. The kingdom's whole identity was built on saying no. From day one, it rejected Jerusalem as the one true center of worship. It rejected the promise God had made to King David and his descendants. And ultimately, by creating its own convenient state-run religion, it rejected real obedience to God. It was a throne without a divine promise, a kingdom without a real covenant.
And this, right here, is the huge lesson from Samaria's story. It is a stark reminder from history that you can have all the outward signs of a nation. You can have kings and power, and even something that looks a lot like religion. But if it's not built on a true and solid foundation, it simply cannot last. It can be erased.
Which leaves us with this final question to think about. Any nation, any organization, maybe even any one of our own lives, if it's built on power, but without a real grounding promise, how long can something like that really last before it too just vanishes?